and welcome everybody. This is Thirsty for Knowledge Thursdays, a weekly webinar series presented to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. My name is Tom Alessi. I am going to be your pilot and your moderator for tonight's flight and for the event. We're coming to you live tonight from the Plan of Masson, Rhode Island. They are a nonprofit special needs pool trust providers. I will introduce my guests in a moment, have them give a little information on them. But before we do, a little pre-flight checklist for everybody. So just so you know, all your mics and cameras have been turned off. There is a chat box that is available. So if you have questions, please take advantage of the chat box. Our assistant Melanie is behind the scenes. She's manning the tech and the cameras. She will be on top of the chat box as well. What we ask from all of you is that if you could just wait until the end to hold off on your questions, it would be easier. We'll try to get to them. If we don't, we'll certainly try to follow up with that. So just to make sure you're in the right flight, this is questions and concerns for parents with a child who has special needs, okay? Presentation again is brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. We are a nonprofit organization. We are dedicated to financial wellness. Our goal is to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. Our mission is we believe that financial wellness is a contact sport. We believe that there's guidance and engagement along with the tools and software. Otherwise, your participants are just not going to engage in the process. You can visit our website, www.ariesfoundation.org, to learn a bit more about what we do and how we do it, and how we might be able to benefit either your organization, your business, your community group in some way, shape, or form. As I mentioned to you, I'm your pilot for this evening. My name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services for more than 20 years. I am an investment advisor, which means I act in a fiduciary capacity in dealing with my clients. To my left, probably your right, though I'm not camera friendly here, I am going to introduce my first guest, which is Craig Richardson. He's coming to us from the Special Needs Resource Network of the Moody Street Group in Newton. Craig, if you just give a little introduction, tell folks who you are and a little bit about you.
Sure. So Craig Richardson, as Tom just said, I've been in the financial services field for roughly 16 years, and my specialty is working with families and small businesses to help them develop a financial plan and outlook so they can have a better relationship with their money.
Terrific. Thank you very much. So as I said to you, we are live tonight from the Plan of Masson, Rhode Island. We have two special guests with us here this evening. Kathy Vitello, she is the Director of Operations for the Plan of Masson, Rhode Island, and the Executive Director, Joan McGrath. I'm going to ask each one of you again, just a little introduction to you, how long you've been involved with this, a little bio on you, and then if one of you could just give us a little rundown on the Plan of Masson, Rhode Island.
Okay.
Terrific.
I'm Joan McGrath, and I am the Executive Director here. I've been with Plan for 12 years. I've been Executive Director since February of this year. And my previous role here was the Director of Finance for all the years before that. I was in public and private accounting. I had my own accounting business, and so I've been working in accounting for 25 years and working with nonprofits for 20 years.
I'm Kathy Vitello, and I am the Director of Operations. I started with Plan about 7 years ago. I began as a service coordinator, working directly with beneficiaries and their families, and eventually was moved up to Director of Beneficiary Services, and in February became Director of Operations. Do I see how long I've been doing this?
How do you know what?
I'm
That's
the
okay.
old lady here. So I have been a social worker for over 35 years and have worked in a variety of capacities: psychiatric, home care, hospice, hospitals, rehabs, etc.
And so Joan, you're gonna give us a little bit about the plan of Mass and Rhode Island?
Yes,
Sure.
yes. So, plan.
Just a little housekeeping, our technical support says we need to speak a little louder.
Okay.
Some of
all
our
right.
audience may not be able to hear us.
Thank you.
PLAN stands for Planned Lifetime Assistance Network of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And we are a nonprofit, a 501c3. We provide trust management services as well as service coordination for our beneficiaries that would be people with disabilities. We administer the oldest and largest pool trust in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And we have almost 800 beneficiaries and $60 million under management. We've been around since 1971, and we're looking forward next year to celebrating our 50th year in business, in operation. And our founders were active in the ARC and in NAMI, so we feel we have a lot of knowledge and expertise in dealing with people, and we understand the population.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great. 50 years next year.
Yes,
That's
yep,
a cool
yep.
thing right there. So we're going to get a little bit more deeper dive and details from the plan when we get into the special needs trust part of the presentation tonight. Right now, though, we do have some disclosures that we need to go through. The first one is the Aries Foundation for Financial Education is a nonprofit organization. This is meant to be purely an educational, informational piece. We share this, as Joan and Kathy will mention, that we share this with our networks, share it on the website. Eventually, we'll have our YouTube up and running as well. Any rebroadcast or use of this, we make it available to anybody, but we specifically ask that you do it as educational purposes only. The Aries Foundation, as I said, is nonprofit. We are not affiliated with any securities-related business, nor are we a registered investment advisor. We strongly recommend and suggest that if you have any questions, concerns, whether they're legal, financial, or tax, that you seek out a professional for help. I am going to say that there are beverages on this flight. We take the information we give you very, very seriously. We just try not to take ourselves very seriously. We want you to be relaxed. We want you to enjoy. So kick back, pour yourself a cold one, have something refreshing with you. I know the ladies to my right here are enjoying some Prosecco. The rest of us, including our crew in the background, we're drinking White Claws this evening just because we're in somebody else's property and we wanted it to be light and refreshing and not get too carried away. So pour yourself a cold one and we'll say skål.
Skål.
All right, let's get right into this. So what I want to do here is I want to start with the basics, and I really want to start legal documents from this part. And so I'm going to toss the first question out to Craig, where I'm going to say, so I know we talk to families about having a will,
Yep.
but whether they're special needs or typical, why is it important that somebody should have a will?
It's very important to have a will regardless, because that is the final document that actually speaks for you when you can. So if you don't have those will and intent, then your loved ones have to figure out what you meant,
Okay.
or what you were hoping to achieve when you're not here.
All right.
And if you have a special needs child, it's even more important.
Right. And so that's the question I'm going to toss to one of the two of you, Kathy. I assume, why is it important for a family with a special needs child to have a will in place?
Okay, so it's a legal document, and it's really important if you want your wishes carried out. And if you don't have a will and you pass away, you die in what they call intestate, which means that the probate courts take over your estate and they make all the decisions about the distributions and guardians.
Okay, and we'll get to guardianship in a little bit, but does that mean in that situation that if I pass away with no will, somebody else is the court's gonna decide who gets my child or who's gonna care for my child?
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
So that's one of the major things there. So for everybody out there, make sure that if the will is not in place that you do. I know one of the things that comes up a lot, and we're here in Massachusetts, the audience is out there in the world. In Massachusetts, generally, if you get a will done, you usually have a power of attorney and then a healthcare proxy, because Massachusetts doesn't recognize a living will. But as far as power of attorney, if I can shift it a little bit and just sort of, and I'll stay here with Kathy, with power of attorney for the special needs child who's now maybe come of age. Is
Mhm.
that something they should be considering?
If the child that is now 18 or over is able to appoint that person, because with a regular power of attorney, I decide I'm going to appoint you, you can act as my power of attorney and handle financial matters, but it has to be activated and I can revoke it whenever I want.
Okay, so then from that, I'm just gonna stay there. I'll come back to you in a second, Craig.
I'm not going anywhere. I got a
Right.
full camera here.
I just want to stay with that because if I'm following that, so if I've been in a situation where, what if the child is unable to invoke it or allow it to happen? Is there a way to have that happen?
So you would then probably have to look at guardianship
Okay,
issues,
that's what I.
conservatorship issues, yes.
So it depends on the child and, well, at that point, they're an adult, but
Right.
that lends that. And so then I wanted to come to you, Craig, with the idea of power of attorney, but the durable part of it, because that's usually the term we hear thrown around with power of attorney.
Right.
What does the durable include with that?
Well, durable does not, what it does not include is when you pass away, the power of attorney ends.
Correct.
Okay. As far as the durable versus the regular, I'm not positive. That'd be probably better left to an attorney. And a good question to ask an attorney when you are going through it. The important thing to understand about a power of attorney, though, is the amount of power you're giving somebody when you do give them that, right? Because they can, like you just said, they can sign for you.
That's
They
right.
can sell your house. They're you, basically. So you got to you can restrict that power of attorney too, and that's sometimes a good thing to do as well. You have power of attorney over these assets, but not these assets.
Okay, so it can be restrictive.
It can be restrictive, yes.
Now, and the reason I bring it up and I ask it is because I have daughters who have reached age of majority. So by the law, they're adults. Dad's eyes, no, not so much, but by the law, they are now adults. But they're going away to school, they're going away to places, and my thought is, would it make sense for me to put a power of attorney on so in case something happens to them?
Right. So there are actually two types of durable power of attorney. One is related to your health care and one is related to your finances.
Okay,
And one of the benefits of having a durable power of attorney is you become incapacitated, it stays in effect.
okay. Right, so
There
that
you
somebody
go,
can
there's
act
a
on,
difference.
right, so somebody can act on your behalf
Yeah.
in that situation, right, in terms of going through that. All right, and so then, just wanted to touch on real quick, because one of the things, it's not a legal document, but it's something that's always recommended to have in place, and that's a letter of intent, right? And so Craig, if you just give us sort of overview, and then I'll go to Kathy or Joan in terms of more detail, but the letter of intent.
Letter of intent as regards to special needs, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so a letter of intent is basically going to be about your special needs child. It's going to be all the information regarding, their care, like who their doctors are, what medicines they're on, what triggers them, what calms them, all those really important things. And it's good to have as much information on there as possible and keep updating that information because the situation changes. So a lot of people say, well, I don't need a letter of intent unless I pass away. Well, what if you're just on vacation, right? So it's going to tell, what your child should eat, what they should eat, who they like to be with, what their favorite tool is, those types of things. So it's really important to have that so someone else knows that information.
And so is there an age that somebody should start putting a letter of intent?
So I think that if we're talking about a family who's planning for a child with a disability, then I would say when you start doing your estate planning.
Okay.
Because it really is a document that says that you intend to enter into a legal agreement. So for us here at Plan, we would call that a joinder agreement for a
Okay.
future funded account. And, you have the intention that when you pass away, the money will come into this trust for the benefit of your child.
Right. Yeah, and so we're talking more with the care of the child, whether, like Craig said, whether you passed away or you're in a situation that you just, the kid may go away to camp, right? So you need to have something that's sort of giving that directive of how the child reacts or interacts with others, right?
Mhm.
Because everybody is different,
Yep.
we know that. So that's just one of the things, because I wasn't sure, we get a lot of questions on it. We know that we tell people that they should probably include it along with, if they've got a will, if they've got a special needs trust, as far as the document, the court will review it. But whether, as Craig said, this ongoing process of it, is it something that once, like comes 10, 12, that type of thing, start, journaling it or getting it together?
Yeah, yes, like with all the records that we keep, you would want to keep really good records of medications, providers, treatments that have worked, treatments that haven't worked,
Right.
triggers that you might know.
Okay.
Well, the other thing too, Tom, just like a will. How many times have people done a will that was done 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Since they've done the will, they've been divorced, they've had 2 more kids, they've changed jobs, the house isn't the same anymore.
Mhm.
So it's very important, as you, like you said, update your regular financial plan, to also update all those legal documents.
Right, and the letter of intent goes along with that. That's sort of the conversation here, that almost perceive or think of it as another legal, even though it's not a legal document, but think of it like that legal document, as Craig mentioned, that you want to make sure that upkeep is happening with them. Okay, I'm going to switch gears now. We're going to move over, because I want to touch on briefly about government benefits. Because I know that's one of the questions that always comes up, and there's always confusion, believe me, among everybody in terms of it. But so Kathy, I'm going to start with you. Just a quick overview of Medicaid.
So Medicaid is actually a federal program, and the federal government allows each state to manage its own benefits. So in the state of Massachusetts, in order to be eligible for Medicaid, you have to have under $2,000 in assets.
So I'm going to interrupt you right there. Is that when we talk about means testing? Is that what
Yeah,
they're
they're looking
referring
at your,
to?
yes, your assets, and so it has to be under $2,000.
Okay, and so that's all I can have in my name, is
Yes, correct.
$2,000 in order to qualify.
Absolutely, yes.
What about income? Am I allowed to have income?
So it depends on where you are. You are allowed, the short answer is yes. So it depends on where you are, what services you're receiving. For an elder in a nursing home, most of their income would go towards their care. They
Right.
only have a small allowance. Somebody living in a group home, the same thing, a certain comes in to pay for their rent and
Okay, right, so they're basically factoring that as part of it, okay. So we want to bring the volume up a little bit. We're getting that hand signal from our wonderful assistant there. And so one of the confusions that comes up is the differences between SSI and SSDI, right? So let's start with SSI. So SSI, similar to Medicaid as far as?
So SSI is considered Social Security supplemental income, and it is designed to help people with disabilities and low income.
Okay,
And most of the time, if you qualify for SSI, you automatically qualify for Medicaid.
okay, so the same means testing that goes there with SSI as Medicaid?
Yes.
Right, so 2,000 and
Yes.
probably no income?
Yeah.
Now, as a child, so someone who's not reached age of majority yet, right, they would be eligible for SSI?
Under certain circumstances,
Okay.
so yeah,
Right. Because otherwise, you're filing for SSDI,
correct.
right? And if I file for the child, say a 14 or 15-year-old, when the child becomes 18, I have to refile?
So if you retire,
Okay.
that's when you're gonna refile,
Oh, all right.
because then the amount of money changes.
So she's telling you that I'm old. See, that's the way she said that. It was a nice way she did it, after going through that, but that's okay. I get it a lot, so don't worry about that. She says, but so that's what it is. So long as I'm still working, if the child was on SSDI, the child stays on SSDI, regardless of the age of the child.
Correct.
Until I retire, then at retirement, the child then has to file for their own
Well,
SSDI.
they get a percentage of your retirement,
Oh,
so
okay.
the dollar amount increases.
Okay.
But the disability has to be determined before the age of 22.
Right, so that's when they age out of the system.
Is that something that's been changing? Or is that only with the Able Act?
No, that's,
That's always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Abel's a different age. We'll get to that in a second, right, in terms of going through that.
right. But on SSDI, after a 2-year period, you become eligible for Medicare as well.
Okay. Right. Yeah, and so one of the things with this, and the reason I'm not going too deep into the questions on these is if you do want it, we do have a sort of an overview. It's what we call the roadmap to government benefits. that we make available to anybody. You can get, if you reach out to either info@Aries Foundation and just ask for it, we'll shoot you out a copy. Or you can shoot it to Melanie, she's manning the tech back there. She's M. Krupa, that's Krupa @ariesfoundation.org, and she'll shoot you out the roadmap to government benefits. We'll get that out to you and going through that. All right, so now the real reason that we're here, which is to go through special needs trusts. And we get questions all the time, and some of these have come from different presentations that we've done over the time frame. But really the conversation is, what's the difference between a first-party trust and a third-party trust? So let's start with the first-party trust.
Okay, so we probably should start with trusts in general.
Okay,
So,
let's start with trust.
yeah, so if you were to join a plan, it's a nonprofit organization, and we're a professional trustee. And having a professional trustee relieves family members from the day-to-day financial and service coordination duties, really, of your loved one. Trustee takes responsibility for the required reporting and keeps current with all of the required benefits and distributions for the trust. And we're accessible to, sorry, I'm not loud enough. We're accessible to all individuals with various levels of assets. And plan, as opposed to other trusts, we have other banks, for instance, that have trusts that they require very high minimum deposits and balances.
So let's get back to, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that comes up a lot for when we're dealing with families and talking to them is it just this, okay, it's a trust.
Yeah.
Like you just explained, but this, and I understand that we'll get to the supplemental needs in a second, but first party versus third party. So let's start with the first party,
Okay,
because that's
so
one,
yeah.
so we'll start there.
So the first party is often referred to as a self-settled trust, and to have a first party trust, it has to be the beneficiary's own money, which they received either through a settlement or they inherited the money. So a first party trust is subject to a Medicaid payback.
So when you say Medicaid payback, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with this. So if the Medicaid benefits which they qualify for,
Yeah.
the beneficiary passes away, there's assets left in the trust,
Yes.
then the government can come back and say,
Yes, so they can put a lien on the trust for any amount that they would have paid on behalf of the beneficiary during their entire lifetime.
for an entire lifetime.
So they could live in any different state, because it's a federal program.
Right,
We would be required to reach out to any state that person lived in to get whatever the claim is anywhere.
right, whatever benefits have been paid out over their lifetime.
Right,
And so ultimately, the idea, this is money, like you said, that the beneficiary winds up with. Okay, we'll talk about this in a little bit.
Yeah.
But as Kathy mentioned, that the reason behind the will is that if the assets happen to go to the beneficiary, that's not a good thing.
right.
It's
So
not
that
good.
leads us to the third party trust.
Otherwise known as what's called a supplemental trust.
Yes.
Okay.
I think they're all considered supplemental
Yeah.
needs
Perfect.
trusts.
Yeah,
I don't
That's
know.
what I'm telling you. I see,
Yeah.
I'm confused too.
Yeah,
So
no,
the
no,
third
that's
party-
fine, yeah,
So the third party trust.
You're right.
This is what the most common.
So the third party trust is, I'm sorry, right, it's funded by another person.
Okay.
So the grandparents put in their will that they want to leave it to the disabled grandchild. They pass away, it funds the trust. And the benefit to that is it's not a Medicaid payback trust. And the donor determines where the money goes once the beneficiary has passed away.
Okay.
So,
So the money that goes in, the beneficiary has the benefit of the funds that are in there.
right,
The beneficiary passes away, their assets still in the trust, those can then go to,
wherever the donor, the grandparents had originally,
so a
Okay,
second
so-
beneficiary, contingent beneficiary, something
Yes.
along those lines
Yes.
down, okay. So
That's right.
the funds can flow out that way. And so what's the disadvantage to setting up a third-party trust?
so many people might feel that there's a constriction, that they're not able to use the funds as they want because it is a discretionary trust.
Okay.
And the purpose of that is to be sure that we provide the best, to make the funds last longer, as long as possible, and that they do everything that would be for the benefit of the beneficiary.
So when you say that, is it the donor who's not, doesn't feel that it feels that it's constrictive, or
The
beneficiary?
beneficiary, yeah, so the
Those-
grandparents set up that trust, and the grandchild wants to spend it on,
a Ferrari, a Tesla now?
right,
Right.
yeah, Tesla, that's right. And so it's not that we wouldn't help that person purchase a car, but we would help them purchase a car that made sense for their life.
Right.
And that would preserve their funds to extend that trust, so that we could be there for a very long time.
Now, what if the funds for the beneficiary are in a first-party trust? Do we have the same conversation going on? Is there the same restriction and limitation?
So it depends on the benefits that they're receiving.
Okay.
So if, again, the advantage, if they have money they've come into, they can put it into the trust. They are now, it's not subject to that $2,000 limit, which, they can't have, so they put it into trust, it's non-countable.
Right.
And then we administer the trust based on the benefits that they're receiving, Medicaid, SSI, SSDI, so that we don't in any way negatively impact those, housing, whichever.
Right, and so that was one of the questions, because the funds that are inside the trust can be used for certain criteria. There's certain things that you can spend the money on,
Right.
right, to benefit the beneficiary. One of the questions that comes up every now and then is housing. That's one of the things that comes up. Like, if the funds go into the trust, I, as the donor, can then purchase a home or purchase property for the benefit of the beneficiary through the trust?
Can
Can you?
you? Yes, yes,
Okay.
you could. There's a lot of rules that play into that. as
Well,
far
that's what I
as- Yeah,
figured.
so I mean, the whole.
There's always rules.
Yeah, the one
There's
thing that
lots.
we work around here is it has to be sole benefit.
Okay.
Child alone, that would be sole benefit, but if there's other people living in the home, we need to take that into account.
Okay.
So isn't that another reason you use a third-party trust, is there maybe multiple beneficiaries
Multiple beneficiaries from,
in the trust? So let's say, I have 2 children.
Yeah.
Say one of them was special needs
yes,
and the other one wasn't. So I may put all my assets in the third-party trust, so it could benefit both of them. But when I have a trust inside the trust specifically for the special needs child,
yeah, you need a special needs trust.
so it'd be a
for-
separate trust.
Yes,
Yeah.
separate
Whether it's
trust.
first or third party, doesn't
Correct.
matter, it's a separate.
Right, it has to be separate for the special needs child.
Right, because my understanding, and again, I want to get clarification on that. So if the funds are in the special needs trust, the individual is getting housing benefit, can they take money out of the special needs trust to use it to pay for additional housing benefit?
So there was a case several years ago that you'll hear people refer to as the DeCambry case.
Okay.
And the bottom line, the end result of that was that the court decided that distributions from a special needs trust that are regular, reoccurring, are added onto the person's income. So at the end of the year, when they get a rent review, up goes the rent.
All right, that's why. I knew there was all right, sorry, that was me. I was having a conversation with that Melanie. I'm sorry. She's giving me the upside. I'm like, well, I'm asking a question over here. I wanted to know the answer.
So
to
the answer
that.
is just buy them a house and be done with it.
Yes. Well,
Housing is one of the more difficult
Yes.
topics. It's
Right,
very, very difficult.
And,
Yeah.
and so we'll get into that in a second, because we're gonna talk about able accounts, but before I do wanna take a couple of minutes just to talk about the plan of Mass in Rhode Island. So the other thing that comes up, and I don't wanna say this is a misconception, but it is a misconception, or however you wanna do it, because this concept of a pooled trust provider. So does that mean that my money's swimming in there with somebody else's money, or
No,
what?
absolutely not.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, we do not commingle funds. It is pooled. Each person's account is pooled for investment purposes only.
Okay.
But each beneficiary has their own sub-account, and
So-
all of the ins and outs are tracked individually for that person. So no matter what you put in, whatever the investment strategy you're in, that's the gain loss. If you liquidate your assets, that's the loss, gain or loss. It's all individual. There is no pooling for it.
Okay, all right, so that clears that up.
Yeah.
In terms of, so who's managing those portfolios?
Webster Bank is,
Okay.
we partner with Webster Private Bank, and they have been an excellent partner in helping us to protect and grow the assets of the.
Right, I'm sure there's some fiduciary limitation on what can be invested and how it can be invested in that part of it. And does every individual, are they set portfolios, or are there a way that they could go in and sort of?
So we have strategies.
Yeah.
Based on matrix, and that's the beneficiary's condition, their projected spending, their age, health, all of these, and we review these quarterly. So we keep, so we liquidate funds as we need to if something comes up and we need to liquidate funds, but or move them to a different strategy.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's pretty consistent, and we monitor that quarterly. So.
Okay.
I'm gonna kind of ask a small off-track question. When you're doing a review quarterly, especially right now in this pandemic,
Yeah.
right, and you're watching the market go up and down,
Yes.
how do you decide as an organization what is in the best interest of everybody as a pool? Because
So-
I mean, there are short-term needs and long-term needs, so I just don't know how
Right,
you manage
and so so Kathy is very important in this process. Kathy has been involved with beneficiaries themselves, and we do a study, and it takes weeks over each person being examined in that quarter, and we decide what payments are needed coming up, what we project will be needed. But it's a detailed process. And the
So
board
they're
is
setting
actively
aside
involved.
almost like a liquidity bucket, if you will.
Yes, yes.
One of the things for the audience, I'm a buckets guy, so you might have pools, silos, bags, whatever, I'm always with buckets with me if you've ever heard of it.
I like buckets too.
Yeah,
Yep.
so,
As long as you
but
don't pick the
it's,
bucket.
Yeah.
so it's going
It's
through
the
on
next step.
on a quarterly basis and actually reviewing what that individual has been spending.
Right.
And so then you've got that set aside to say, no, we know those expenses will be covered as far as going through that.
So don't use the Vegas approach, just throw the
Yeah.
dice. or roll.
I know.
Okay.
No.
All right, and so one question I do have, because one of the things that always comes up with families out there is the cost for setting up specifically a third-party trust, right? So what does it cost to set up a trust with Plan of Massimo?
So we have a one-time enrollment fee of $500.
So it's 500 for the crowd out there.
$500.
$500. Yep, that's the
$500.
one-time fee. And you can set up a future funded trust where you might have insurance funded or whatever you can set, or $500 to set up a third-party trust that you're starting in weeks. So, and that's it. Then if it's, if for a first-party trust, it's either $600 or $750, depending if you need an attorney involved in the application.
I know my opinion, so I'm gonna ask yours.
Okay.
Is funding a trust with life insurance a good idea?
I think it is.
No, good.
Yeah.
Because I do too.
Yeah,
I
yes,
just-
yeah, very
I'm
good
for-
idea.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things with that, and we've done this at other times and talked about, is it's leveraging, basically. It's one of the ways that you can take assets or put money aside and say, I'm gonna guarantee that when I pass, little Jimmy, little Susie, whoever the beneficiary is going to have those assets that can then go in and fund to the trust.
Right.
Because that's one of the things that we run into a lot, and I'm sure you've probably seen it as well. It's great to set up a trust, but if there's no funding schedule or nothing set into funding it, it's just a piece of paper.
Right.
And it needs to have that plan in place, which is what I'm hearing from the two of you, that's something that you, like you said, with that, you called it something else, the letter of intent, you called it jointer or something like that.
Jointer agreement.
Jointer agreement that will put that funding scope in place. It's very important that you follow along with that and that there is that schedule or set, because otherwise you're really just waiting till the end. And that Craig just mentioned, that's sort of the Las Vegas approach. Like, I hope there's gonna be stuff
Left.
available at the end to fund into the trust, but I have no idea what's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, in your experience, because you haven't been doing this for 50 years, but your organization has
Yeah.
been, right?
We're
What are some,
combined.
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you see that actually derail that funding from happening? Like someone has a best of intention, they're gonna leave these assets into the trust, and then something comes up, and then the trust isn't funding quite the same way. Are there things that happen that way over the course of?
It happens,
Yeah.
and usually they just didn't plan well, so their money isn't there, you know, when they want to finally
Well,
fund the
that
trust.
maybe retirement costs more than they thought,
It could be,
or they had a medical issue that came
Yeah,
up, that
or-
it's
yeah.
funds, or
sometimes we've had people that, they leave the trust, they leave someone else as the trustee.
Ah.
A family member,
and it never
and
gets
then,
in there.
and it never makes it into the, so it's,
They actually need their own swimming pools.
Yes.
oh, yeah, you don't go there, but yeah, we wonder, so it's, but the
So-
important thing about a third party.
Yeah.
Or any trust, is that you don't have to have a minimum to join our trust.
Okay,
know,
so
where
that is
some
one of the things,
banks-
that the questions that has been asked about that.
Yeah. I mean, you could go to a bank and it's over $1 million required. Here, we suggest that it be no less than $10,000, but you can put any amount in.
Right.
And if you plan accordingly, you can add money as you go to the trust.
And anybody can add in, right? It doesn't matter who it is, anybody can.
To a third party.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
yeah,
But
right,
not a
third-
first
Not
party.
first party, we're talking third
Yeah,
party
right,
now in
yeah.
terms of the trust, but in a third party trust, anybody can add into that.
And you get I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't interrupt the moderator yet. But do you get a lot of questions about how much should I be leaving in the trust? Like, what will my child need? And how do you address that with a client?
So they should work with a financial planner or an attorney to discuss how much money they think they need. Depends really on the person's, am I not talking loud enough? Sorry.
Yeah, because you said use a financial planner,
Yeah.
right? And that wasn't a plan.
No, I mean, it's something you really need to plan.
Yes,
You need
yes.
to talk to and figure out, you know, it depends on the age of the child, it depends on the condition of the child.
Yep.
It really is,
What services they need, what
Right.
benefits they're receiving, what
Yeah.
other caregivers they have.
right, yeah.
So one of the questions that actually, that's sort of, I'm gonna spin this out to you, because it actually came in this afternoon, right? So the question was on time commitment. If they're asking somebody to act on behalf of their, like when they pass, right? So they're asking them to be the family representative or the trustee of the, like, what's involved in a time commitment? Like if I'm trying to go to Craig and say, Craig, listen, I want you to be my backup, right? So if I pass away, what's that time commitment that's going to come on that?
So with a third party trust,
Yeah.
when you sign your once you sign your joinder agreement, we're gonna work with you to fill out what we call a life care plan, which is very similar to how you described the letter of intent.
Oh, okay, so it's a life care plan, not a
Here,
letter of
it's a
intent.
life care
Yeah.
plan,
Okay.
and it's gonna identify, you know, who the beneficiary is, what their issues are, what their needs are, who are the people involved, who are their providers, their living situation, and then what are your goals for this money? And then based on that, it could be minimal,
Okay.
or it's
So I pass, he's gonna take over, so he may not have too much involvement or interaction.
no, we may, like, if we get stuck with an issue, we may reach out and say, we need a little support with this issue, or we'll send you the annual statements, those kinds of things.
Right, but that's for the plan of Mass and around. What about with a regular third-party trust? Like, so if I just went to an attorney, I set up a third-party trust, and now I've gotta find somebody to be my trustee, basically, or my
Yep.
contingent
Right.
trustee?
Right.
And then, do they have to go through all these iterations? Is there a lot that's
Well,
involved?
they should,
Okay.
and so they are required to file paperwork. I mean, you have to file tax returns annually, you have to, there's a lot of requirements that have to be met, and that's why having a professional trustee do that, you know, it's gonna be done timely and correct.
I can tell you the other thing too, from me, with my clients, is the trustee issue comes up big time. Who do I have as a trustee?
Right.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's not the Waltons anymore, it's not 10 of us all living in the same house, so
Yeah.
people have their own lives and that kind of thing going on. But the other thing is, a lot of times, especially with special needs, you always think of a child, you think of a little kid.
Yeah.
And some of these children are 50, 60 years old,
Right.
with 70, 89-year-old parents.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a matter of survivorship. The uncle I wanted to be the trustee, he passed away. They're just not alive.
So that happens, and we also get the uncle who lives longer than the parents, he takes on the trustee, and then after a while, he doesn't wanna do it.
Which
Louder,
one?
the-
Louder because the fan is on.
Oh, okay.
And one of the thing with families is that parents want to make sure that all of their children stay in touch with each other and support each other. And depending on the level of functioning, a person with a disability comes to you, I want $100.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have to
Straight
say
out the rest
no.
of it. Yes. Yeah.
You create conflict in that relationship.
Dynamics. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Another reason for a trust.
Right.
All right, so now I'm gonna try to move us along because I know we're getting close on the time here to try to get everything.
And I'm getting low on beer.
And get low, so it's seltzer, but that's okay. We're moving on to ABLE, right? So the 529A accounts, achieving better life experience, that's ABLE, right? So a little background into ABLEs. ABLE started, they came into fruition, actually the enactment was in 2014. First ABLE accounts didn't hit the books until 2016. And in 2016, you were very, very limited in terms of what was available. You had to live in the state where the ABLE account was set up, and there were only 7 states. Now, due to further legislation, to what's happened, we've expanded to that. So now based on the moving forward and the other act that occurred in 2017, you don't have to live in the state where the ABLE account is set up. There's now 30 states that have ABLE accounts. So there's a lot that's going on. So one of the questions I have, and I'm going to start over here with the plan. I'm going to you guys first. This is right as far as who can open an ABLE account.
So actually anybody, you can open it for your family member, or the disabled person has to open it, but the disability has to have been determined prior to the age of 26.
Right, and so 26 right now, that's current legislation. I know right now there is talks and there's stuff going on that they want to move that to 46, but with everything that's going on, who knows where it'll be, because we have a lot of experience dealing with the visually impaired community. We know that some of those disabilities occur later in life. So having the cutoff at 26 doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Hopefully legislation will move forward like it has with some of these accounts, but they have been expanding, and it's a good thing all the way around. So, but I just want to follow up on that. So I'm the beneficiary, I'm the individual who's differently able, that has a disability.
Yep.
I can open the account,
Yes.
but if you are sister, parent, godparent, whatever, my understanding is you have to be appointed as a representative. You have to have some sort of.
Not to open it, but to help access it.
Oh,
That's my
okay.
understanding.
Oh, okay. So there's a little question on that in terms of it, because I know they talk about being a registered agent or having power of attorney, which goes back to the power of attorney conversation, to be able to help some aspects of opening the account. So while they do try to say that it is about, making it at ease, that's really for those individuals who do have the ability to cognitively go through it. If they don't, then we run into a little bit of situation, right? But so the account gets set up, who can contribute?
Anybody can contribute.
Anybody, you can contribute.
I have money. You need money, right? I can't do stamps or anything like that.
Right, but so
However, there is a limit.
there is a limit, there's always a limit.
Hold on, the other thing too, though, is you're going with cash in that, right? So
Yes.
unlike a trust, it cannot have other assets.
Correct.
Correct, so you can't hold anything else. That's a good point to bring up with that. So in the trust, other securities, real estate, other things can be held in a trust.
It can be held in a trust. What we have is a pool trust as well. So there's the trust standalone, and then it's the pool. If it's
Okay.
the pool, we ask that it would be liquidated and added to.
Okay, so
But for
then,
a standalone, that's up for discussion.
Yeah.
So,
but in this case, it has to be liquid, it has to be cash, it has to be going in, right? And that limit is,
Currently, $15,000 a year. It follows whatever the IRS sets for the gift tax.
right, and so it's $15,000 per year, and that's per individual. You can have anybody contribute to it, but the maximum that can go in is 15,000. The other is you can only have one account. You cannot open multiple ABLE accounts regardless. So because they are all driven by the individual, that's the only person that can only be one. $15,000, that's the
So what
limit.
happens if one set of grandparents opens up an ABLE account and another one set opens up an ABLE account for the same child?
So
And
you
they don't tell each other.
Right, but you can't do that because you're doing it with the individual.
Right.
Only the individual is opening up the account.
Oh, so you're just opening on their behalf.
Correct.
Gotcha.
They'll take your money, but you can't open it, right? Right, but now, so I know we talked about the special needs trust not counting against any of the means tested benefits.
Right.
The funds that are inside the ABLE account,
So this is where you can see a good partnership between special needs trusts and ABLE accounts. So the restrictions with the special needs trust is we don't give cash, we pay for the goods and services, and we have to be very conscious of the rules of benefits. So as we talked about earlier, the DeCambry, those regular reoccurring payments. With SSI, we always have to look at what SSI refers to as in-kind support and maintenance, which means any distribution from a special needs trust for rent, food, utilities can impact your benefit from SSI. You could lose up to 30% depending on how much comes out. So a special needs trust could actually put money into an ABLE account for a beneficiary, and then they can use the ABLE account for those in-kind support and maintenance reasons, and it doesn't penalize SSI.
what they call qualified living expenses, right? So you have these qualifying expenses, as Kathy just noted. So if I'm following it, just to make sure that I understand, with the money can go from that third party special needs trust, can go to the ABLE account.
Correct.
And then the ABLE account can be used to access for some of the things that are not now going to be counted against.
That's right.
But it's up to the trustee of the ABLE account to file all the
So
necessary
we pay the work.
Right, so, well, so when you say the trustee of the ABLE account, you mean the provider or the individual?
So it would be the personal representative or POA or whatever.
the
That's the
individual,
person
yes.
that's responsible for reporting
Okay.
their distributions.
Right, and so that's tracking it. So just folks out there, the 529s, those are the college savings accounts. That's where this has been sort of built on, those same type of principles. The idea, if the funds come out and they are used for the beneficiary, for those qualifying expenses, there's no tax. The idea there is you got to be tracking that.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're keeping a record, keeping a log of what those expenses are and what they're being used for, just in case it ever comes back. Now, I'm not telling you that they're going to come looking at you because of the pandemic and everything else that's going on, but eventually somebody might just raise a flag up and say, hey, well, you know, what was this Tesla for, by the way? You know, that type of thing. So you just want to make sure you're tracking everything, and that brings into responsibility on that, because certainly if it's an individual who's not, that's where you mentioned the power of attorney, that was POA for those out there.
Or the personal representative, yeah.
Personal representative, and this goes back to that family representative. If you've got somebody who's overseeing that on behalf of the individual, certainly for those older adults in the crowd, like me, that, you know, we're going to pass away, that we want to make sure that there are representatives who are in place or can pick up to be contingent trustees or overseers, right, representatives.
And I know you were gonna hit on this anyway, but I just wanted to bring it up. A lot of families, when they have young children, are not sure what their ultimate capacity is gonna be. And so they may not start a 529A or an ABLE account, but if they start a 529, which is that college savings account, and later find out that they can't, the child isn't going to be capable of going to college or using that money for that,
Right.
they can now what, transfer that over to the
Free
ABLE
transfer
account?
up to the $15,000 limit,
Yeah.
right? So, and depending on where you are in the world, again, here in Massachusetts, 529s are tax deductible to the state of Massachusetts, $1,000 per child per adult. So if you follow this out, if there's 2 adults, 1 child, you can put $2,000 into a 529, get the state tax deduction, and then transfer those funds later on to the ABLE account without any penalty. There are states that do have a tax break for ABLE accounts. If you live in Pennsylvania, look at yours, because Pennsylvania not only has it for the 529, but they also have it for the ABLE account as well. Again, it's not going to be federal. The Fed is never going to give you that, but they're giving it to you on the state level in a lot of states. So it's a very good benefit to be able to take advantage of that.
So the one exception to the 15,000 is if you have a disabled person who's working,
Yes.
they are allowed to deposit up to $12,490
Right.
annually.
Of their own money plus the gifting on top.
Working.
Right, working money,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what does it max out at?
So the account at 100, when it reaches 100,000 and it starts to tip over,
Yep.
they will suspend your benefits. You won't lose them, but they'll suspend them.
So use it or lose it, is what
Yeah.
you're saying. Okay.
So, well, let me ask you this, because I was thinking of this the other day, because I was on a National Able account call, and they mentioned that, but I believe it's what you go over the 100,000.
Yes.
So if I'm allowed 2,000, can I get to 102 before we get into any?
Because it's so new, I don't know that they've done
Yeah,
this
see,
to
that's the whole
anybody
thing.
yet.
So there's a lot of this question and concern, but here's the whole thing what we say to everybody, like if the account gets up to 97, 98,000 in it, find something to spend some money on, right? So you're able to get rid of, lower that down so that if you are continuing to fund in, you'll be able to do that, but make some expenses for the individual.
Tom, our assistant has told us that I'm almost out of beer and it's 5:20.
Okay, you're almost done. That's, I appreciate that.
There are a
Thanks for
couple
giving
of
us on track.
questions as well.
Okay,
That's
so
the
we will
question.
try to get to it. So I'm gonna flip quickly to guardianship. I'm not gonna go too deep into guardianship because we do a complete other presentation talking about guardianship and the documents and conservatorship and all that's involved with that. But we are specifically talking in this case, not guardianship for a young child, but now guardianship, as Kathy had sort of mentioned earlier when we were talking about power of attorney, when we get over the age of 18, now seen as an adult. Like I said, even though my girls, they're not in their eyes of their dad, but they are legally adults in the world at this point. But when should, and I've seen and read, and in fact, I published an article with the Schools for Children about when to look at this for putting together a plan for guardianship. And really, we're talking about starting at about age 12, age 13, when you start, building this out. But is there a cutoff age where parents should really be concerned and say, I got to make a decision now?
So it's actually the opposite. You can file it, but in Massachusetts, the probate court won't look at it until the person turns 18.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't matter at that point, as long as you file it, it's there.
Yeah.
But what we've been told or led to believe is that probate court can take upwards of 6 months, and that's pre-COVID, so I don't even know what it would be like now to deal with it.
They're saying, I went to a workshop today, so
Yeah.
They're saying they're doing a lot of it virtual, and this is,
Oh, okay.
guardianships are being taken care of.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yes.
good to hear. So that's a good thing for the audience out there that's being dealt with on a regular basis. One of the questions that did come up at one point from a previous presentation was, I know we talked about power of attorney and having specific power of attorney. Can you have a partial guardianship?
So the answer is yes, and there's a huge push to make them limited guardianships.
Limited.
Yeah, so years ago, you would just become guardian over the whole person. They would lose all their civil rights and you controlled everything. Now they said today the documents are up to 8 pages long, and they specify exactly what you can oversee and help with the decision.
Now, isn't there also, like, I've seen parents, they both apply for guardianship, and I've told them sometimes that's a mistake, right? One should be guardian, the other one should be caregiver, because isn't there some kind of a benefit a caregiver can get?
Yes.
Yes.
And is that state by state, or is that federal?
So again, it's through Medicaid.
Yeah.
So it depends on how each state manages their Medicaid program for eligibility.
Okay. And so then one of the other things that comes up is the differentiator. I tried to say that, but I'm having booze here, so just realize that.
It's a lot of syllables.
Yes. Between guardianship and conservatorship.
So guardian is over the person, right? And their daily life, care, housing, and conservator is over finances.
So can I be both?
You can.
Does it make sense to be both?
Well, years ago, they tried to separate those two. You can be, but it's better to separate them.
So
So it could be a conflict, correct?
So
Yeah.
it'd be better for if I was guardian, that Craig was the conservator for
Correct.
the individual,
Yes.
and go that way to find it. And do we name, much like we're talking about with the trust and the trustee, do you name contingent
You should name a successor, yes.
successor? That's
Because it's a legal proceeding, and if you don't, you have to go back to court anyway, so.
okay.
Should we get the questions?
Yes, so if you just hold on 1 second, I'm not really there yet. Craig is jumping ahead on me. I will come to you in a second.
Almost out of
Melanie.
beer.
So one of the things we're gonna do for everybody, and thank you for both Joan and Kathy for being here, and for Craig for being in on this as well. So one of the things we're gonna do for everybody, we send out evaluation form. Part of this is we take the information we try to give very seriously, as I mentioned before, but we value the input and feedback. We like to see that we're staying topical on a lot of these and that we're giving out, and want to make sure that we're getting the proper feedback. And that way, if you have certain questions, you can certainly come back to us with that. Before I get to the Q&A though, I do want to mention what's on tap. See, we like to keep the blues thing, the theme going there to everybody.
I'm gonna keep it White Claw.
Yeah.
Product placement.
So next week on the 24th, same time, these webinars take place. They're Thirsty for Knowledge Thursdays. They're at 4:30. Next week, we're doing inclusion and diversity. We are going to be live with the Perkins School for the Blind, their career launch program. I mentioned before, we have a lot of involvement in the visually impaired community, but we're going to be talking about different steps and measures an organization or a business can take to try to hire those who are differently able or have a disability. The week after that, we're going to do 9 mistakes that you should never make with your IRA. And on the 8th, we're going to be live, another event like this, with the Your German Kitchen. They're in Newton. If you guys ever need your kitchen redone, I tell you, don't go in there because you'll just get lost and just love the place. But we'll be live with them. We're going to get sponsored on our Think with a Drink with Scout and Cellar. And we're going to be doing a small business survival guide because there are 2 small businesses that have adapted. We'll talk about PPP and the CARES Act and everything.
Tell the best part about that. The best part is we're going to be doing a live tasting where we're going to be giving out sample packs.
No, we're not doing that for that.
Oh, we're
That's
not.
what I
Oh,
tried
stay tuned. We are doing that.
No.
to- Not now.
There is free booze coming.
All right. Now I can go to Melanie and say, Melanie, what do we got for questions?
Okay, first question. Is there a monthly fee in addition to the one-time enrollment fee of $500 to manage the third-party trust?
So when the trust is funded, there is a 3% annual fee, which is taken quarterly based on the balance in the trust at the time. And that covers social services, service coordination, trust administration, and investment management.
But to follow back on that, just to make sure and to clear for that question, if it's a future funded trust, if I just set up a
That's it.
trust
Yeah.
and put in this
That's
$500,
it.
there is no additional
No
fee
additional
on top
fee.
of that
And
until
we will
funds
reach
go in
out
it.
to you once a year until it is funded, just to see how things are going.
Again, that's
But
the
there is
important
no
part
fee.
about funding into the trust and making sure that it gets funded, but there isn't, until assets go in, there
Until
is no
assets, yeah, until it's funded, and then it's 3% up to 500,000. If it's over 500,000, the fee decreases. And I'd be happy to speak with anybody. If anybody has questions, they can give us a call, and I'd be happy to talk about as the fee decreases over certain dollar amounts.
And we'll be giving the way you can contact them in a second.
Yeah.
Melanie, you.
The next question. Does New York give a tax deduction for the 529A at the state level?
So trying to ask me of all 52 states, I am going to guess that answer is going to be no, just because of my understanding of the state of New York. But I will just say this, that for most states, it's rare. Like I said, I mentioned Pennsylvania just because I know that's one that does give it for the ABLE account. Most, because these are so new, they're so just getting onto the books in a lot of states, they haven't really considered it yet and haven't really gone through it.
Well, even Massachusetts didn't get one for the 529 accounts until recently.
Right, so
It's something that's evolving, so
Yeah.
keep checking.
but one thing with that is I would not let it hold you up. Don't not open an account because you're not getting the tax break. That's as one of the things I think that both Joan and Kathy have tried to stress as well, is that it's moving the plan forward, making sure that you're putting the pieces and parts in place so that you can then have more. And then if they do ever do it, you make a contribution later on and they'll give you the tax break.
That was it.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I certainly appreciate that.
That was easy.
It is our easy button. All right, so if the audience has questions for you guys, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, they can certainly call us. It's 617-244-5552. We do have an 800 number.
I don't know.
Well, that was
off
your
the
cell
top of my
phone?
head.
That's
What's
okay.
that?
Is that your cell phone number?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You can call her at 2 a.m.
And is there a generic, or would they reach out to one of you, or is there a generic information?
There is info@planfma-ri.org.
Okay, so have you got that? So info@planmass-rhode-island.org.
Yeah.
Right?
And then on top of that, we have a really nice website, and in our website, you'll see the links on top. There's a resource page there as well.
And that's plan@masson-rhode-island.org.
So they can
Yes.
reach you directly from the website. as
Yeah.
well.
So
Craig, what
that's-
about you? How do folks get a hold of you?
You can call me on my cell phone. But yeah, you can actually reach us through the Aries Foundation is one way to reach me. But if you want to reach me professionally, you can reach me through crichardson@moodystreet.com or 508-789-6415.
And so you can, any questions, you can reach out to Aries at info@ariesfoundation.org. You visit the website, you can see, like I said, upcoming events that we have. We got all the replays on there from previous events, what's coming up on it, and see some of the other stuff that we're doing. Otherwise, you can call us directly at 617-431-5045. And on that note, I'm going to end it. If you can shut us down, Melanie, thank you all and have a
Thank you.
great night.
Thank you.
Stay safe.